author Chuck Graham, and he's going to be talking about one of my favorite places here in our region, the Carrizo Plain. Before we get started, just some housekeeping rules. Some of you maybe already heard these already, but this is a webinar format. It is not a meeting format, so you're only looking at our faces. If you are curious, you can check under participants to see if your friend has joined us yet or not. You're welcome to ask questions. We suggest putting them in the Q&A box that Lauren will be monitoring. You can also pop them into the chat that I'll be watching as well. We're intending to hold most or all the questions until the end, so Chuck can get through his presentation. I do want to say thank you so much to our webinar series sponsor, which is Montecito Bank and Trust. Thank you guys so much for supporting the museum once again this year. And thank to all of you who were pitched in and made a suggested donation for today's talk. Every little bit matters, and it really does help us out. Some people might be wondering when we're going to be opening, and we finally have exciting news because it's happening. It's finally happening this weekend. We're kind of doing a soft opening. We have 2 new shows that we've been working on that we'll be able to debut this coming weekend. So for the first several weeks, it'll just be Saturdays and Sundays for the general public and anybody that wants to come in, 11 to 4. And then for members, you have a little more latitude in when you want to come, Wednesday through Sunday. If it's Wednesday through Friday, just maybe shoot us an email or give us a call and make an appointment, and we'll be very happy to see you guys here. And you'll have the museum to yourself. We're very excited about the new shows. Just quickly, we have Biomass, Contemporary Meditations on Nature, and our first floor gallery, which was curated by Holly Harmon and Nicole Strasberg, and it's really amazing. You don't want to miss that one. Very unusual and interesting art that we have on display down there. And then on the second floor, we have Art from the Trail, which is a juried show, which we worked with Healthy People, Healthy Trails, all the wonderful folks there. So artists have been going through the Santa Barbara County area, and we have 4 trail regions that'll be featured in the show. So if you're an outdoorsy person or you love art, either way, you're going to love the show and come by and see it. And then our next event to mark on your calendar is our virtual celebration of underwater photographer and author Richard Salas. We're going to be honoring him with our Wilderness Spirit Award on Sunday, June 6th at 4 p.m. So please check out our website for details and how to get your reservation to attend that. And also, of course, you can follow us on social media, get our emails, etc., to keep an eye on what's going on. And now I'm excited and happy to be able to introduce our speaker, Chuck Graham. Chuck is a freelance photographer and author from Carpinteria. He spends lots of time, obviously, exploring the Carrizo, one of his favorite areas, but he also does guided kayaking trips around the Channel Islands National Parks, which I just learned, and I might be calling or emailing you, Chuck, because I've been dying to get into kayak, and I haven't been out to the park in a long time. He's written and published in National Geographic for Kids, Men's Journal, Outdoor California, LA Times, Natural History, and a lot more than that. And so we're extremely pleased to be able to have Chuck here sharing about this incredible place that's really right here in our own neighborhood. So welcome, Chuck. Thank you.
Hey, thank you very much. Thanks for having me, and thank you to all those tuning in. I'll get going here. So the Carrizo Plain is obviously one of my favorite places. I sometimes wonder what is my favorite place here or the islands. So I kind of flip-flop back and forth. But I do spend a lot of time out on the Carrizo Plain, and my time spent out there has grown every year, I think, ever since I started going out there in 2006. I really didn't think about a book until about 2017. So there was about a 7 or 8 year gap there between super blooms, 2010 to 2017. And then 2017 was pretty phenomenal. And I started thinking about it then, and with the 20-year anniversary of the Carrizo Plain coming up in January 2021. I was thinking I could be close. And then we had another super bloom in 2019, and then I was really getting serious about it. And then 2020, it was kind of a funny year. 2000, let's see, December 2019, there was a lot of rain, and there was nothing January, February 2020, and then we got a lot of rain March and April 2020. And it wasn't a super bloom, but it was a really nice year, and it was actually ended up being like the best year I'd ever have for wildlife. So here we are. This is the entry point to the Carrizo Plain on off the 166 side. So coming in from the south side of the monument, heading north. And that's kind of what I work out of. It's my truck, solar panel, gear, just kind of poking along all the little nameless roads that are out there, all the old ranch roads, because you just never know what you might find out there. And that has served me well. It's just driving slowly, busting out the binoculars, stopping, scanning, just kind of trying to stay in a moment and see what unfolds. Because like I said, things just pop up. I usually have a list, you know, a want list of photos that I want to get or things I want to see, but you just never know what you're going to get, what you're going to see. You kind of make your own luck out there just by being out there and taking it slowly, being patient, and seeing what unfolds. This is the cover of my book. This is actually 2017. This is near, I would say this is between the road leading to the visitor center and the Selby campground. And it was first thing in the morning, and I really didn't think I was going to have a shot at these antelope. They were about a mile out, and all of a sudden they just turned around. They started working their way back towards Soda Lake Road, where I was parked. And before I knew it, they were almost up to the truck. So it was pretty amazing watching them work their way back. There was two bulls. You see one of them in the front there. There's another one to the left, and they were having a good time. They were frolicking in those hillside daisies. They were using their antlers to fling them up in the air, and they were feeding in there. So they're really enjoying themselves. And that ended up being the cover because it not only showed, you know, part of the super bloom, but it had wildlife in the super bloom. And you could really tell that the pronghorn were enjoying it, maybe more than I was. Bush lupin, one of the more fragrant flowers we have, and definitely out there. You can smell it in the air. It's thick. This is actually taking in the foothills of the Caliente, looking towards the Temblers. This is in 2019. So just on foot, walking along, seeing what I could find. And you see the bush lupin in those lower elevations in the Caliente. This is one of my more favorite photos, I think. I don't know if it's because it's a film capture. I didn't start shooting digital until I was in Iceland in 2016, and I really didn't get serious about it until 2017. But this shot was taken in 2010, and it was during that super bloom, and I was a big Fuji Velvia 50 guy, and this actually ended up on the cover of Outdoor California. I did a story for them on the Carrizo Plain, and it was just beautiful scene, really green with those magenta blooms, the owl's clover offers, and it was just almost as far as you could see to the foothills of the Caliente there. But this is one of my more favorite flowers out there, I'd say. This is actually taken this past winter. Some beautiful stars out there on the Carrizo Plain, and nighttime is magical. Cold, but always worth it. So when I shoot photos out there, of course like to get close, but sometimes it's better not to. And sometimes I just like to show uh, the wildlife within its landscape, within its habitat. And the barn owls, they really love the sandstone. I mean, a lot of the birds do because there's so much cover. There's so many alcoves and clefts in the rock ledges, good perching habitat, good nesting habitat. And the thing I really like about the barn owls is that their feathers tend to blend in with all the multicolored lichen on those sandstone rock outcroppings out there. There's not a lot of them, but uh, when you get barn owls like that, or maybe some other wildlife on the rock, it's a great perspective, and you can really see how wildlife can use the landscape to conceal themselves. Um, so I had been watching these barn owls from afar with my binoculars, and they were circling over the sandstone rock outcroppings, and this one finally perched on a little crack or crevice in the rock on this sandstone face. So I always enjoy seeing that sort of capture. So it's always a thrill to get that kind of shot. Um, I have a lot of shots like this, but always look for that when I'm out there. And there's a bird that migrates through during the winter and in the spring. These are the flock of long-billed curlews, and you see big flocks of them out there. And it's kind of funny because living on the coast here in Carpinteria, I only see like one or two at a time individually. You don't see these big flocks, but out there you get these huge flocks, and they love the grasslands out there, especially after a rain. This is actually in 2019, um, right around Soda Lake area. They tend to hang out a lot around the flatlands around the Selby Road and out towards Soda Lake, like a lot of shorebirds do. And this is another image from my book, Carrizo Plain, where the mountains meet the grasslands. And it's just, clouds are amazing out there. That's a real important component for me. I think any photographer would agree. Clouds really make the scene. I mean, it's always beautiful out there, but you do get some amazing cloud formations out there, and sunrises and sunsets can be phenomenal. And this is just one of those spots out there on the flats, on the grasslands. You just pick a spot. You've been moving around all day, and you just want a spot, pitch a tent, and that dawn and dusk light is really special out there. Those are the temblors to the right, and the sun is setting at the northern end of the Caliente. Now, this doesn't look like much, but when you're looking for critters out there, you look at all the burrows because they're really important. A lot of the animals live in burrows, and they all kind of start with the giant kangaroo rat. And you can see its tracks in the bottom left. They have big feet for a rodent, kind of kangaroo-shaped feet, long tail, big almond-shaped eyes. And so that's a giant kangaroo rat den. And I've had biologists tell me that as the Carrizo Plain goes, or as a giant kangaroo rat goes, so goes the Carrizo Plain, because the giant kangaroo rat is really important out there. It's the keystone species out there. It provides food for so many different animals, land mammals and owls, hawks, falcons, and then their burrows are ready made for just about everything out there. Badgers and kit foxes and antelope ground squirrels, blunt-nosed leopard lizards, all that stuff, snakes, other lizards, other rodents. They all rely on this animal right here. And biologists track the numbers, the populations of giant kangaroo rats out there by satellite. where the giant kangaroo rats burrow, they tend to mow down all the grasses around their burrows. So they see the biologists look at the satellites and look at the circles, and that's how they count populations out there. They typically come out right before dark, and then I do see them right before the sun pops up. But they're fun to photograph. Difficult, but fun. So I shot this with my headlamp on, the flash on, and manual focus. And this one's actually just hopping out of its burrow. This is actually near the visitor center, but you can see a lot of them right after dark. And this is one right at dawn. This is out on Elkhorn Plain, which is in the southeast corner of the monument. And I was actually sitting near a badger den, but everything lives around everything out there, whether it's a predator or not. Everything kind of lives on top of each other. So sitting there, I can't just focus on my intent, which would be the badger, but I'm seeing antelope, ground squirrels. This is in late May, so it was warm. There's snakes around. There's kit foxes running around. Everything is out, especially all the young, all the new wildlife out there. So it's getting accustomed to its surroundings. And this one just popped up right next to me. And if you don't move, they're totally fine with you. This is actually taken at the ranch. I had an opportunity to stay there for a few nights, and this is right out the door there. And this was I took this in the middle of the night. There was a den under a tree, and I would go out there, and I'd go out in the dark, and I'd flip on my headlamp, and there it would be, and it let me take a few pictures, and then it would hop back down. Then I would leave and go back inside, and I'd wait 20 minutes. I'd come back out, and he would be out again. So it kind of went on like that for a couple hours. As a long-tailed weasel, doesn't look ferocious, but they are very ferocious and very unafraid. This was a surprise. I was actually sitting on a kit fox den, and I had been sitting there for 2 hours, and I was getting the feeling that the den was not occupied. And I knew where their alternate den was. And so I moved to a spot where I could see both dens, and I wasn't seeing anything. And then all of a sudden, this long-tailed weasel popped out the first den I was sitting on. And then I knew there wasn't any kit foxes in there. But these long-tailed weasels are carnivorous, and they'll run through all types of burrows trying to stuff out. Mainly they want squirrels and giant kangaroo rats. They'll eat them. I've heard them taking raptors as well. Like when they're attacked by a raptor, they'll attack the raptor. I've heard of a story of a white-tailed kite attacking one, and the weasel actually killing the white-tailed kite. So they're pretty ferocious. They don't look it, but they are. This isn't the greatest picture. This is not a picture in my book, but I was just astonished by what was going on here. This is a burrowing owl den near Soda Lake, and this isn't all one family. This was 3 or 4 dens all congregating at one den site, and there's 7 owlets there, but there was about 13 in that area, and this is the most I could get in one frame. I couldn't get any closer than this. The dad was not allowing it. I even snuck in there at 2 and 3 in the morning, and he wasn't having it. So I left him alone, and I actually had to take this from my truck. But the numbers was what really got me. And they were all congregating around this one den site and making a lot of noise, and looks like they were enjoying each other. And this den site is now active again. So we'll see what happens this year. This is one of my favorite animals out there. The Carrizo Plain is probably the last best habitat for the endangered blunt-nosed leopard lizard. the male, and you got to creep along slowly to find these lizards, either if you're on foot or in a car. So when I'm in the truck, I'm literally creeping along. And these guys, they're really fun to watch because when bipedaling across the grassland, they'll get in some thick grass, and instead of like running through it or underneath it, they tend to swim across it, almost like a kind of an awkward looking breaststroke. But really fun to watch, really beautiful. This is the male, and this is the female. And the female here has her breeding spots or breeding plumage, and she is pregnant. And like most of the other animals out there, they utilize those burrows for cover. But she was also looking for a male, and there were plenty of males in that region. But beautiful lizards, probably my favorite. Not sure. Tend to think that when I see them, but I don't see a lot of them. But last year, I think I saw about 15 at 2 different spots that were really active. But the Carrizo Plain, the Elkhorn Plain, those are their best last bastions of habitat. This is another one of my favorites out there. This is a female, a mom, San Joaquin antelope ground squirrel. And in California, they're a species of concern, but globally they are endangered. They are listed on the IUCN Red List as endangered, and for the usual suspects, habitat loss. The Carrizo Plain is the best place for all these endangered and threatened species. And the San Joaquin Valley has patches or islands of habitat where there is wildlife, but corridors are cut off, and so you find that these animals are on islands, kind of separated. There's a lot of work being done to buy lands, acquire lands outside the Carrizo Plain, meaning to the north, and reestablishing old historic habitat, opening up corridors so there can be these connections with the wildlife, moving through the valley. But ultimately, centers around the Carrizo Plain because study can be done there because it's the least disturbed grassland habitat we have left in California. So these squirrels, they are really fun to photograph because they're super curious. Lately, I've just been having a blast with them. The kits are born right. They're out right now. They're born. They're out moving around, running around, and they're on their own pretty much already. They stay close to mom. She warns them if something's up. But if you sit down or lay down in the ground, and they'll come right up to you. They'll run around. They'll get comfortable. And they just start foraging, and it's really fun watching the kits play, roughhouse, chase, climb, all kinds of stuff. And this one, you can see all her milk ducts on her tummy. It's full of milk, and they have an average of 6 to 9 kits at a time. But it's kind of a meager existence. Their average lifespan is only a year, so they come and go. They are another animal like the giant kangaroo rat. They feed a lot of different species out there. There's one stretching out, just waking up, coming out of the burrow and laying it out like he's sliding into home. But they do stuff like this, and they do a lot of dust bathing as well. And this is a newbie, little tiny one, near the visitor center actually. But as you can see, they're out on their own pretty early, and they're super cute. Never get tired of watching, photographing them out there running around from burrow to burrow. Their burrows are very complex, and there's multiple entry and exit points, and you think you have one and you're close to it in a burrow, and then it disappears, and then it pops up somewhere further away. And usually they let you know about it when they let out that trill. The parent, when it sends out that warning trill, their body will convulse as they build up the strength or the sound bite to really sound off and warn their young that a threat might be nearby. Like this guy. It's snaky out there, especially when it warms up. You have to watch yourself, watch where you're putting your feet, your hands. The Western Pacific rattlesnake really blends in well out there. And you can look at the size of the rattle on this one. It was a good size one. And I was on a dirt road on foot, and I had 5 go off on me, one after the other. And this was the first one. Nothing snapped at me, but they all let me know they were around. And they tend to flatten out on where it's warm, and they soak up as much heat as they can for as long as they can, and then they move off into the shade. So I didn't quite see this one at first until it let me know it was there right next to my foot. And this one did not make any noise, didn't move. But what I like about it is right before dark, it had scooched out this berm around its body. And this was like right in the middle of the road. And so it was going to stay there for the time being. But I really liked how it made that little berm around its coiled body. And this wasn't a bigger Western Pacific. It didn't do much other than flick its tongue, but they sure do blend in well. It was almost dark when I saw it. So I was with another guy, a cameraman, and we came upon it right before dark. This isn't the greatest picture, but it's kind of comical. These are kit fox pups poking their head out of their den, and they think I can't see them, but their ears are the biggest ears of any fox in North America, and they are, I think, arguably the most amazing animal out there. Their hearing is so good that they can hear a giant kangaroo rat drumming its feet underground in its burrow. So that's how the giant kangaroo rat communicates with one another. They drum their feet. Like a drum on the ground. And if you're sitting in your tent and you hear this drumming, that's what that is. But the kit fox can hear that drumming underground. And the kit fox has lots of veins in its ears, and it's a mechanism that allows them to cool themselves during the day. So their ears serve 2 purposes, but the kit fox can go its whole life without a sip of water. They get all their moisture from their food. They're omnivorous. They have a lot of options out there, but it's pretty amazing that they don't have to have a drink of water. This is a film capture. This is back in 2010, I believe, during the winter. And I saw a pair of kit foxes from Soda Lake Road, and I thought, what the heck, I'll give it a shot. And I slithered on my tummy for about 50 yards to get this shot. And I was flattened out, and so was the fox. And this is the male. And he let me get really close. I got closer than this. That's him there. They have beautiful coats. They're pretty amazing. When they have their pups, and if it's a good year for food, which means it was a good year for rain, sometimes a couple of the pups will stick around and continue to live with the parents and help raise the next litter. So they have a very complex family trust there. They don't push their pups out. The pups disperse on their own but every now and then there's a helper fox. And I did see this behavior last year at a den where the mom and the dad had a helper help raise uh, 6 pups. And I watched it for about 2 months. And these are 2 pups getting to know each other. It's pretty funny when the pups come out from under the ground. If the parent isn't there, they just lie there. They don't really do anything. Once one of the adults comes up from the den, then all the roughhousing and playtime starts. And so there's not a lot going on around the den until one of the parents arrives and can stand watch, and then the pups really go at it, and it's a lot of fun to watch, and certainly a lot of fun to photograph. And this is a parent. This is out on the Elkhorn Plains. I actually shot this from my truck while I was driving on Elkhorn Road, and now it's getting harder. It's getting more difficult to find wildlife because the grass is not green anymore. It's got that tan buff color, much like the fur of a kit fox. So I happened to see it sticking its head out of the den, and then I stopped, turned off the truck, and then it was just kind of wandering back and forth between entry points of its den. And then across the road, there was another den, and that's where its pups were. So sometimes the parent, mainly the dad, he might get a little tired of the pups, and he goes to another den site close by just to give himself a break because he has to feed all those pups. The mom tends to stay underground and continues to feed until the pups are weaned. But mostly from what I've seen, I see the dad a lot out and about. And there's really efficient hunters. Their paws are small, and they have fur on the pads, so they're super quiet when they're creeping through the grass. They're hardly ever hear a noise. They warn the pups with a kind of a really low guttural, I wouldn't even call it a yelp or a growl. It's kind of something in between. And then the pups will respond. And then they also rely on the warning calls of their food. So California ground squirrels, antelope ground squirrels, they rely on their calls as well. And I've watched them react to them and those calls, and then dive into the den from their warning calls. So everything kind of is connected out there. Everything kind of works together. And here's one with an antelope ground squirrel. Saw this a few times. He brings it back alive, and he hands it off to the dominant pup. And then, nature, sometimes it's cruel to watch, but that dominant pup would take the food down below, and all the other pups would follow. And then I can only imagine what goes on underneath, but they do tear the prey apart, and then they all come running out with pieces and act like they're the dominant one. And then there would be mornings where some prey would still be lying around, and that turns into kind of a play item amongst the pups. There's also something else that preys out there, or the raptors out there. This is a red-tailed hawk. Looks like it's sitting on what was a giant kangaroo rat. But the Carrizo Plain is one of the best places to see raptors out there. Red-tailed hawks, and lots of prairie falcons out there, and ferruginous hawks when they're migrating through. See a lot of northern harriers. I was seeing a golden eagle quite a bit out on the Elkhorn Plain last late spring, early summer. So there's a lot out there, and there's also 5 types of owls out there. So lots of predatory birds. There's a ferruginous. There's a prairie falcon. This is a shot in my book. This is, I want to say it was on top of a telephone pole on Soda Lake Road. And there's another example of the feathers of a barn owl blending in with its habitat. And this is actually a painted rock inside that sacred natural cathedral. It's sacred to the Chumash and Yokit Selenian peoples. And they were just sitting up there, blending in. Their nest wasn't, they didn't have any, it wasn't active yet. This is when you can still go out there during the winter. But they had paired up, and you could tell they were a mating pair, but really loving their sandstone home. Lots of places for them to roost and perch inside this rock outcropping. And there's one landing, also a painted rock during the winter. And here's one that's trying to hide. A lot of these old ranch buildings out there, they serve as roosting, perching, nesting habitat for all kinds of owls and raptors and lots of different, squirrels and giant kangaroo rats and things like that, badgers. So they're real important sites for them. So when you go visit, you got to be quiet, kind of tiptoe around, try not to disturb something. This one was going from one shack to the next and acted like it couldn't be seen, but as you can see, the tail end sticking out there, and I knew where it was. And this is what was going on inside. So these are all barn owlets. There's two of them there, but there were actually four of them. So they serve as important nesting habitat. As you can see, there's a lot of prey that's been brought to them. Lots of giant kangaroo rats in there. There were two trailers here, and the owlets were in one. And I hope this doesn't disgust everybody, but I was led to believe at first, I thought this was a barn owl that was doing all this. And an animal tracker got a hold of me, said he saw this picture that I had published in a magazine. And I thought this was the barn owl doing this. And he said that it was a long-tailed weasel. And then I asked him, well, how come the barn owl doesn't go after the weasel? And he said the barn owl doesn't want anything to do with the weasel because the weasel is super aggressive. So they kind of just put up with each other. I went back to this trailer not too long ago, and all these carcasses had now kind of just were nothing but bone. But these are all giant kangaroo rats, piles of them, all by one long-tailed weasel. The barn owl was in the ceiling, and obviously puts up with the long-tailed weasel, its comings and goings. These are raven chicks. There was 3 of them in there. You can see why birds more than likely came from dinosaurs. These kind of look like pterodactyls. This is in another abandoned shack barn out there on the Carrizo Plain. And mostly you can listen before you see something. You'll hear it before you see it. But ravens are kind of, I don't know, they're pretty pesky out there with all the raptors and whatnot. They go after everything. But this was a really good spot for this nest. It was lodged kind of like in a loft type setting in this barn. And the chicks would slowly raise their heads and then slowly slink back down until one of the parents comes back for them. And here's a good look. This is actually a slide film capture. I want to say 2006. There was quite a few pronghorn in this herd, at least 30. But the pronghorn, they're not doing as well out there as Tully elk. Tully elk are one of the fastest growing herds in California, out on the Carrizo Plain. The pronghorn are more specialized browsers, whereas the Tully elk are more diversified. Would like to see more of them out there. I haven't been seeing them as often lately, but they are an impressive animal. They are the fastest land mammal in North America. They can actually hold 55 miles an hour longer than a cheetah can, although the cheetah can run faster, but the pronghorn can sustain that speed for a longer period of time. And I've seen it on display, especially when coyotes are around. They can really go. Other than that, other than a coyote, they don't really have too much to worry about out there. It's pretty amazing seeing them out there. Their eyes are really big, and they have really long eyelashes. And they also blend in well out there on those, especially when it's dry. This is one of those bucks that actually appeared on my cover of my book. And this is that same day, and this is how close they got. But you can see its eyelashes and its teeth. They're really thick necks and shoulders. They're really powerful, and the big ears. So they're well equipped out there. And it was a thrill to see them that morning during the super bloom. And there's a good example of how they contend with the remaining fencing out there. Now the bottom part of the fence has been removed, so the pronghorn can move freely. But when I first was photographing these guys out there, I thought, wow, they're an antelope, like I've seen in Africa. They'll jump right over these fences, but they don't do that. They go underneath, and so you'll see a lot of the fencing that's still out there. The bottom rung has been removed, so they can move underneath. And Friends of the Carrizo Plain and other nonprofits like Los Padres Forest Watch, they've done a really good job of removing a lot of the fence lines out there. There's still plenty of it that needs to go, but definitely on the right path. And these are the sort of things that needs to be done to open up corridors for wildlife, especially pronghorn and Tully elk that really once covered the entire San Joaquin Valley, where there was just thousands upon thousands of these herbivores. This is one of my favorite pictures of Tully elk out there. This is taken back in 2010. And I was actually driving out to Painted Rock. And all these tidy tips were in bloom, and the hillsides are super green. And this is a decent sized herd of Tully elk cows. There's a couple of bucks in there, but they move back and forth pretty regularly out on the plain. I want to say just southwest of the visitor center. I see them there a lot. Their numbers are growing. There's been some recent translocations to enhance those numbers, but they're doing really well out there. And I see them most times when I'm out there. Got to bring those binoculars though, because you miss a lot if you don't have binoculars. And this is last May, I want to say. This is at dawn, and I was sitting on a kit fox den, and a small number of Tully elk cows were moving through. So it was really pretty to sit there and just kind of soak in the moment with the kit foxes, and then kind of moving my big lens to my left and getting this Tully elk cow with a painted rock in the background. Here's another herd. This is on the east side of Soda Lake Road, where I typically see most of the big numbers of Tully elk. And there's some youngsters in there. There's some green there, but there's also a lot of tan, a lot of dry grasses there. I kind of tend to like the tan mixed in with the green when shooting these guys. It gives it more contrast. But always amazing seeing these herds of Tully elk out there. This is Soda Lake. This is the largest natural alkali lake in Central and Southern California. And it's obviously dry, crusted over. It's kind of fun to walk out there when it's like that. And it's you don't have to worry about sinking in the mud. It's long past that point. And this is this past winter. And taking pictures out there, it's kind of unusual because it's almost like putting together a puzzle with all the cracks and flakes and ridges in the salt pan, and then hopefully getting some interesting clouds and color at sunrise and sunset. And that's what it looks like when it's full. That was a full Soda Lake back in 2010. So before that 2010 super bloom. But it gives you an idea of what it looks like. And it's just gorgeous out there with all the shadows and rolling hillsides and then the mountains with a full Soda Lake. And of course, migratory birds love it there. It's an important stopover on their migration path. And these are all American avocets. And they're loving the shallows there. It doesn't get real deep out there at all. They don't even get all the way in it, but an important place for them to rest and feed in Soda Lake. And here's another shot of that's actually my shadow on Soda Lake. This is actually a film capture. Can't remember quite when, but a little while ago, and a sunset shot, and really beautiful out there with the Tembler Mountains in the background. And it almost appears like Soda Lake goes all the way to the foothills, but that's not accurate. It stops at Similar Road, which kind of meanders between the east side of Soda Lake, running out towards the Temblers. And this is just this past winter. And so actually there's a lot going on there. It's cold. I can see it's frozen, but you can see the wisp of Tully fog out there over the grasslands. Typically it stays below the high points of the Temblers, which it's doing there, and then just kind of hovers above the grasslands. And so you typically see that Tully fog after it rains, and then you get this layer, which is really nice. It makes for some really good photography out there with diffused light. And this is another really pretty spot along the way to Selby. And of course, clouds. I love the clouds out there. It makes a big difference with photography. And you look at this picture and you think, gosh, the Carrizo Plain it's so vast and everything. And it is. It's 250,000 acres of, the least undisturbed grassland habitat we have in California. But then you think about what once was, and this grassland habitat extended all the way beyond Fresno, a few hundred miles to the north. And of course it'll never be like that again, in our lifetime anyway. But it is good to know that organizations, nonprofits are trying to acquire more land and open up more corridors, so some semblance of beyond the Carrizo Plain, what it could be. And of course, helping all the wildlife that needs this grassland habitat. There's another one of my favorites out there. This is a friend of mine. His name's Hector. He's a kayak guide with me out on the Channel Islands National Park, and I had been looking at this lone hill for quite some time, and it just wasn't adding up unless I had somebody standing on top of the hill. I really needed that perspective. Without him standing there, then it's really not much of a picture. This is in 2017, before that super bloom, and I coaxed him into going out there with me, which really wasn't that difficult. But then I had to have him stand up there for about an hour. It was really cold. And then I got into the foothills of the Caliente and then shot across with a longer lens. And he was a good sport. And every now and then I see a golden eagle sitting up there now. So it's pretty cool. And this is the view through my tent. I tend to take a lot of pictures of myself, not, a vanity thing, but, a lot of times I go out there and it's just at the spur of the moment, and I'm my only option. So I set up the tripod through the other side of the camera, and this one just kind of worked out. I had the clouds, had a super bloom, I had tidy tips out there, and owl's clover, and the temblers in the background, and everything lined up. And I love doing this. It's kind of fun because you can do it anywhere with a tent, and you get all these different views through your tent. And I'm still waiting for that pronghorn to saunter right in front of the opening of my tent. We'll see one of these days. This is in the Temblers. I want to say this is a film capture in 2017. You can see the desert candles in the foreground, and then all the ridge lines of the Temblers dropping down back towards Soda Lake. That's what you see out there in the background. Lots of clouds, lots of weather. It was windy, cold, but boy, it sure was something else up there on that side of the Carrizo Plain. And speaking of diffuse light, this is what I look for when you get that Tully fog. And this is one of those places out on the Carrizo Plain you kind of can bank on when there's a super bloom. You can pretty much bank on tick seed coreopsis and phacelia, and mainly, and then other blooms mixed in. But you can see these flowers when there's a bloom from far away, just on the east side of Soda Lake as you're driving out on Simler Road. But nobody out there. Beautiful diffused light, color. And it's just one of those moments where you're going, gosh, we live in such an amazing place, such a diversified place in California. And it's really, an amazing thing to experience, a super bloom and seeing it all, transform in front of you, especially when all the light and everything lines up. And this is a Western tanager, the male. I actually shot this at the KCL campground while I was waiting for some kit foxes to get active. So when you're looking for something that you're banking on, that you want to photograph, and you're waiting around, surely out there's always something else that's going to come around, and you can kind of bide your time with. And that was the case with the Western tanager here and this Bullock's Oriole. You see them a lot there as well in the KCL campground. This one was feeding in some milk fetch while I was waiting for the kit foxes. So always something around there to pass the time. This was not during a super bloom. This is during last year, 2020. So like I think I said earlier, we had a kind of a strange year. In December 2019, we had rain and then nothing January, February, then March and April, it rained quite a bit, quite steady. And then this was the scene on top of Padrone Canyon, out in the southwest side of the Carrizo Plain. So cream cups and gold fields and owl's clover, fiddleneck, it was all right there. Pretty sweet bouquet up there on top of the canyon. And I love this with the clouds and the color, the contrast. You got the gold fields and green ephedra there, and then some owl's clover, and then beyond is the plain, and then you running up into the panorama hills, and then the temblors. So a lot going on there. Good contrast, color, clouds, and this is kind of a little bit of a transitional zone where before you actually drop into the plain proper, this is a little bit of elevation, and this is the scene you get in this part of the Carrizo Plain. And speaking of contrast, then you have your sage thistle with the gold fields, and it's pretty amazing. It definitely stops me in my tracks for sure. And that's it. That's my presentation. I hope everyone enjoyed it. I'm more than happy to take questions if anybody has any out there.
Thank you so much, Chuck.
Thank you.
Just a beautiful presentation. I can't get over how you captured just the personality of all the animals and their character, and it's just incredible. And we do have questions.
Sure.
I was going to help moderate from our Q&A box. So Kevin asked, when you were showing some of the burrowing owl dens, he wondered if those might be former kangaroo rat burrows.
It's very possible. It's very easy for, a burrowing owl really isn't that much bigger than a giant kangaroo rat. A giant kangaroo rat is kind of a funny looking animal. It has kind of a funny hunched over body, big eyes, big feet, overgrown feet, and a long tail. And so for a burrowing owl to claim an abandoned giant kangaroo rat den, it doesn't take much for them to get in there and dig it out and just make it a little bit bigger for a burrowing owl and its clutch. So yeah, there's a lot of that going on. There's a lot of claiming of old abandoned giant kangaroo rats, but that's their purpose out there. That's one of their main purposes out there, is to provide homes for all those habitats and all those inhabitants.
And I'm personally curious, because you mentioned how you've kind of monitored some of the burrows in your visits. Do you find certain animals reuse burrows year after year, or what kinds of patterns do you see?
When kind of go walking around out there, you're looking at mounds and you're looking for fresh dirt that's been dug out. The burrowing owls, they're at the same spot. I was surprised actually to see that. The kit foxes have, the ones that I've photographed last year, are not at any of the dens this year. And it's been a tough go finding them. I've only seen a couple of foxes this winter. I do have a badger den that I'm aware of, but boy, they're tough. When I was working for the film crew last year, they were doing they've finished since then, but it hasn't been released yet. They did a documentary on California wildlife for PBS, and they hired me to find wildlife while I was working on my book. And I found a badger. I found its den, but they have multiple dens, and they're able to burrow for 900 meters underground. So they can go into a den, and then you think you've got them, and then no, you don't. They are a long ways away, popping up somewhere else. But the film crew figured it out and got the footage at night.
Wow, that's very cool. Another question from Kevin. He asked if Tully elk and Roosevelt elk are the same.
No, there's 3 types of elk. We have Roosevelt, Rocky Mountain, and Tully elk. We have Tully elk, and then we have Roosevelt elk up in Northern California.
Okay. And then Bob asked, is it correct that the plain was threatened with development in the past few years? Did Forest Watch and others help save the plain, or is it still threatened?
When the previous administration, the Trump administration, was in office, they were looking towards allowing more oil drills to open up. And some of those oil drills or those oil platforms were grandfathered in when the monument became a monument in January 2001. The administration wanted to allow that exploration to go on here. But fortunately, a lot of that stuff has been thwarted for now with the new administration coming in. So development, no, there won't be any development out there. There would be such a, I don't know what to say, how to call it, but there would be a fight, and I just can't see that happening. This is the last of our grasslands, and just imagine seeing that go away towards development. That's unspeakable. So I really don't see that happening ever. There would be lawsuits and there would be a fight. It wouldn't go away. That's for sure. I don't see that happening.
Yeah. I have another question from Peter. Is there an elusive animal that you have yet to photograph out on the plains?
Badger.
Oh.
Seen them. It's got some really cool looks at them, but they don't sit still and they're super wary. And there's a bird out there. It's called I might be pronouncing it wrong. It's called a LeConte's thrasher. It's spelled capital L-E and then Cont is C-O-N-T, I believe. And they're similar to a California thrasher, but the LeConte thrasher, its main territory is the Southwest, Arizona, New Mexico, but there's a little tiny bubble in the Carrizo Plain. And the habitat is perfect for it. And I've seen them, but like the badger, they don't let me get close enough. Got to figure something out.
All right, I have Carla. I once lived in Santa Margarita and would travel out to the Carrizo Plain. I love that place. On one visit, I saw a condor. Have you seen condors during your visits there?
I've never seen a condor out there. There is a condor picture in my book, and I put it in there for a couple of reasons. They are nearby. The Bitter Creek National Wildlife Refuge is right off the 166 on the south side of it. It's real close to the turnoff to Soda Lake Road on the 166. And then the Los Padres National Forest is also right there. And the forest has been a long time release site for California condors, back in the early 90s. And Bitter Creek now is kind of the main area for releasing birds. My hope and my thinking is that California condors will once again be soaring over the grasslands because they're scavengers and they need open space to find food, and with growing Tully elk herds and hopefully more pronghorn coming to the Carrizo Plain, that'll be a reliable place for them to forage. The picture in my book of a soaring California condor was taken in the Sierra Madre Mountains in the Los Padres National Forest, just across from the high points of the Caliente Mountains, which is within the National Monument. So it doesn't take much for them to get there. Once they get up in the air, they average about 150 miles a day soaring. So I know they've been seen there, but not even on a regular basis. Not yet, anyway.
Well, if anyone's going to find them, I think it's you.
Oh, I know what to look for. That's for sure. It's like they have almost a 10-foot wide wingspan. So when you see them, I've had a lot of experiences with them in the past. They look like a glider when they're soaring overhead. not like your regular bird, not like a hawk or an eagle or something like that.
It's incredible. All right, I'm seeing. Gail asked, how long is the lizard? I think she's referring to the one that you shared early on.
Yeah, the blunt nose. They're actually, when lizards are measured, they're measured from their rear end to their snout. But when you look at a blunt nose from its snout to the tip of its tail, they're pretty long. They're pretty big lizards. And then the females, during the spring, are a bit bigger because a lot of them are carrying eggs, so their tummies are full. But they're a pretty big lizard. They're not like, once you see them, they're pretty large, but then their habitat is just, trying to photograph them is tough because you see them, if like you're driving in your car and you see one, you literally can't take your eyes off of it if you're grabbing your camera or whatever, because they blend in so well with their habitat. Once they stop moving, it's like, man, they just disappear. So you really got to focus when you see them, and then hopefully they won't run away. But when they run away, man, they're like grease lightning. They can take off. So you really got to watch them.
I have a question also from Cheryl. She said, beautiful presentation. Thank you. I'm a longtime resident of the Central Coast and a wildlife conservationist, but I've never been outside of my car at the Carrizo Plain. Any tips for someone who wants to explore?
Well, if you don't have a pair of binoculars, you're going to miss out on a lot. When I'm out there, I drive slowly and I stop a lot and I scan, because you just never know when something is going to pop out of something, a den or behind a bush or whatever. And then when you're on foot, you got to watch where you're going. I don't walk on the burrows because those are homes and they can cave in. And then I utilize a lot of the old ranch roads too, because they produce a lot as well as far as sightings and things. And when it's open, you can walk out to Painted Rock and you walk around the rocks. There's a lot of things to see out there too. So, but you got to have a pair of binoculars. It might be more important than the camera, because you're not going to find anything really, for the most part, without the binoculars.
Yeah. And I was also curious, with some of those abandoned structures that you had gone into, how safe is that for someone? Where you're going, or some of them kind of off the main road?
Yeah, they're really dilapidated, a lot of them. Yes, you have to be careful. Yeah, I walk, tread lightly, that's for sure.
Yeah. You might interrupt snack time. Kevin asked, have you visited the Wind Wolves Preserve in the southwestern end of the San Joaquin, east of Maricopa?
I have. It's a beautiful spot. It's a very unique spot where pretty much everything kind of just converges there, as far as ecosystems and desert, the Eastern Sierra, the southern section of the Eastern Sierra, transverse ranges, coastal ranges, they all just kind of converge there. And that reserve, I want to say it's the largest non-profit preserve in California. Elevations go from like 600 feet to 6,000 feet. So there's a lot going on there. But San Emigdio Canyon is amazing. Sometimes it doesn't look real. It's so broad and vast, and it's gorgeous. And there's a lot of wildlife there too. It's an amazing place, and hopefully corridors will connect the two. It's not far from the Carrizo Plain at all, maybe a 20-minute drive.
Jim asked, what is your favorite long lens and aperture?
Well, it's always nice to have a long lens. I have been fortunate. I have a friend who lets me borrow his 300 2.8 with the 2x teleconverter, and it's great to have, but it's heavy. And So I really enjoy just my 300 image stabilizing, my Canon lens. F4 has nice weight, but I can run with it if I have to get to something. So I really like that flexibility because I can run with it. I can crawl on my belly to nose right up to something with it. There's a lot of options there with that lens. I can carry it all day out. I don't have to have it in the backpack. It's a very versatile lens.
Great. Lots of positive comments. I have Debbie said, this was amazing. Thank you so much. I think you must be so much more than a photographer, especially since you know all the names of the animals and flowers and foliage, more like a steward of the land too. I'm so glad this beautiful part of the county is a monument and will be saved for all of us to see and be a part of now and in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
She said that perfectly. I know our sentiments are the same. And I think that is the end of our questions, unless you have any, Stacy.
No, I just thank you so much for taking the time today to be with us and share so much. And Debbie did kind of say everything I was thinking too, just your passion and I think your respect for what's out there and for taking the time to look deeply, and then that curiosity and sharing it with us is just such an incredible treat. So just a reminder that he has, I don't know if you can see it, probably not saying too well on my camera thing, but the book that Chuck wrote is beautiful. It's here also here at the museum if you happen to be around, and you're welcome to look online for us as well. It's a must-have. If you're curious and want to know more, then you really need to have his book. We'll remind everybody that the museum did work with Jeff McLaughlin on our own Carrizo Plain documentary film, and that is also here in the store. And there's an opportunity on Friday to see it at Kiama Buckhorn because they're doing a wildflower and a festival. I'm not sure how many wildflowers are out and about, but go. It could be really great and it'd be a really fun adventure for everybody. So that's an opportunity you could check out online and learn more about for Friday. I don't know if there's anything else in the chat we need to.
There are just lots of compliments saying how wonderful your presentation was.
Well, thank you very much.
And I think Stacy mentioned it at the top, but we have recorded this and we will be sharing it within the next couple days. It'll go on our YouTube channel. And then if you're email subscribers, that will be available in an upcoming email as well. So look for that and share it.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chuck. We've had an incredible time with you. We've all learned so much.
I appreciate it. Thank you for the time.
Absolutely. Have a great evening.
All right. Have a great rest of the week.
You too. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.